Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we talk about things like what's going on in the precious metal market, industrial metals market, and stocks that are in our orbit or just of interest to those of us that do this kind of stuff. Welcome aboard, everybody, on Father's Day, of all things. So, all you dads, happy Father's Day out there. Hope it was a good one or will be a good one for y'all coming up. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today. I am looking forward to diving into it. First, I want to say hello to everybody. JCT, JR Cat, Scorpion Metals, Bush Dog, Roger at CU Scrapping, E-Waste Mike, Scrapping Irish. Great to see y'all here. It's a warm, humid day. We've had rain in the afternoons for the last few days here. We're going to have storms again. So don't be at all surprised if you start hearing some rumbling and the tumblings going on in the background during this live stream, because the clouds are out there and they're just waiting to let loose on us. But it's that time of year, so that's what happens, right? We get storms here in Florida in the summertime. Gee, go figure. All right. Well, look, we are going to dive right into our discussion today, and we're going to start out with gold. It's been a while since we've talked about gold, so let's go see what's going on with gold. We're looking at the 24-hour chart here from APMEX. Now, remember, I use APMEX. I like the charts that they give us, and I have used APMEX to buy and sell my physical gold and silver in the past. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't get any money from them. I just, like doing business with them. So there's plenty of companies like that are out there. This is just one that I have used and have enjoyed the process. So, but it's always good to have a couple of these available so that you can compare prices, because sometimes the premiums are a little different between the different sources. And I always like to compare information too. So it's good to have multiple sources to share information. Simple Man, welcome to the show. Great to see you here. All right, so gold spot, 1971.7. Really not a whole lot going on if you look at just the 24-hour period. So we'll look at the 3-day, and there really isn't much going on for the 3-day period either. I mean, in the sense that we ended where we started, kind of. But if you look at this bump in the middle, you can see we had a little bit of a climb here, pushing up to 1980-ish, and then we fell back off again. If we look at the 1 week, we're down just a touch, 0.06. No major, concerns about the drop there. And, if you connect the start point with the end point, you can barely see that drop. But what you do notice is that we had some lows that were below the line, and then we climbed back up to where we were. So we've got this sort of ceiling thing going on here that's sort of capping where gold's going. And if we look at the month, we're up just a touch, right? Not much. Again, 0.12%. Can't really, say that that's much. And if we draw a line from the beginning point to the end point, it's just barely going up. You can just barely see it with excursions on either side of the line. So what's happening here. Again, gold being an investment metal, it's all being driven by what is happening with the U.S. interest rate hikes. And since the Fed did not raise interest rates again, they've got investors that are kind of scratching their heads going, okay, now what? There's a lot of folks out there who are saying that we should expect another 0.25 raise. Hey, Urban Prospector, how you doing? So that, that's not a huge raise. It's a little bit of a raise. So what's happening is, because the interest rates have gone up consistently now for a while here in the U.S., people can get more money from money than they can just holding gold. So there's folks that are going into CDs and other money sources rather than hanging into gold. So, that's kind of what we're seeing going on with gold right now. So I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of things changing real soon with gold. And actually, this is kind of good for us because it means that we should see some consistency now in pricing from places like boardsort.com, that, you know, they like to see prices stabilize so that they can figure out, okay, this is where we ought to be pricing in what we're buying, what we're paying to buy stuff right now. Because as we've heard here in the past, it can be the time that it takes for board sort to buy and sell is measured in months for, you know, their loads of products. So they buy and sell from us every day. You can get paid right away from PayPal, or you can get a check in the mail. So they've got to decide, what am I going to pay today, anticipating what they're going to get paid 3-4 months down the road. So they like to see consistency like this. So yeah, good going on with gold here. I don't know if anybody has decided to make the leap and do some investing in gold right now. I'm holding fast. I'm not buying or selling anything at this stage. I'm curious if any of those of you that are into buying physical gold and silver have done any trading here for the last few weeks. Now, Urban Prospector has got a comment about Father's Day. Hey, Dad. Yes. What do you want to do on Sunday? Oh, I was going to hang out with my scrapping friends, but I should be available after 1600. That's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. For those of you that don't know 24-hour time. Okay, have fun with that. Well, you know what? That's better than saying, no, you can't hang out with your friends on Father's Day. All right. So, oh man, that's funny. So let's see. Scorpion Metal says he is holding right now on gold, but he's buying silver. Okay. Yep. That would make some sense. Yeah. Yep. You know, I've been so wrapped up in my buying and selling of stuff at, you know, from my business side of things, that I haven't done any buying or selling of my physical physical holdings right now. So normally I don't sell my silver until we're well over $40 an ounce anyway. So, you know, we're fine there. And I don't know, if gold goes back over 2,000, I might look at selling a couple ounces here or there. I don't know. We'll see. So, all right. Well, yeah, don't expect to see a whole lot happen in the gold market for a while. You know, I think it's just going to keep on bouncing around here until we see some strong movement one way or the other for investment grade products from the banks, and the interest rate rises or not, or holds, or, you know, what goes on there. Scrapping on the Fly, welcome. Great to have you here. All right, so our safety note for the day, and I couldn't resist, I had to do this. Those of you that have seen any of my videos in the last week or so, you have noticed that the shark has been sweating a lot. Yeah, it's like somebody stuck a hole in me, and I've just been leaking water as I've been scrapping stuff. I mean, it really, the heat got on fast here. And so, you know, here in Florida, you've got a big problem with, no, JCT, you're not invisible. We said hi to you when I first came in. So anyway, so, you know, when you've got high heat and high humidity, as we tend to get here in Florida, your body can't cool because your sweat is not evaporating as rapidly as, say, if you were in a drier climate like a desert. So it is very hard for your body to cool when you have high heat and high humidity. So you have to be extra careful. The precautions that I take in the shark cage, I crank up my my big fan. So last year I went out and bought a great big old knocking fan from one of the farm supply stores, the kind of fans that they put in barns and things like that. So I keep the air moving. That helps. And then I have started to remind myself to get water. So I might do 1 or 2 towers and then go get a swig of water. 1 or 2 towers, go get a swig of water. Trying to keep that hydration going in because I am sweating so much. And then just paying attention to, how I feel, so that if I start to notice that I'm not sweating, that's a bad sign. It's time to really take a break and literally chill out. So the other thing that I do is I have these. They're really cool. There's these. I don't want to call them rags, but they're like cooling towels. So you dip them in the water, give them a little bit of a wring out, then you put it around your neck, and they'll evaporate and help cool you down as well. So now these things, of course, all work better when it's a drier, when the relative humidity isn't as high. So when you get really high relative humidity, you just can't, the water can't evaporate, so you can't cool down as much. Now, those in drier climates, you don't have this problem. And of course, if it isn't in the 90 plus range where you're living, then, you're feeling pretty good, right? So yeah, like JR Cat says, it was sunny and 76 in Ohio. So, that's nice, comfortable weather. That is really comfortable. And Mike was having some good weather. He reported in a couple of his videos that they were having really good weather. So, it's that's just the luck of where you where you live, right? And of course, I noticed that NOAA and the climate folks came out and said that we are officially in an El Nino situation. So what that means for those of us down here a little bit further south is we're probably going to get more storms, more rain. But the good news about an El Nino year is that it can make it more difficult for hurricanes, tropical cyclones, to spin up or get really powerful before they smack us, because there's usually too much wind shear. Now, I say usually because tropical cyclones are going to do, they find a way, and a good strong tropical cyclone is still going to, form up. But generally speaking, during El Nino years, it's not as bad during the tropical cyclone season. So we'll see how that plays out. Mike is saying he's got 81 and sunny. Man, that's awesome. That is sweet. And Urban Prospector just got some rain last night. Yeah, but then that's right. I mean, it rains, and then the heat, now you got just humidity out the wazoo. And of course, then you end up with a lot of bugs, mosquitoes, and things like that. And that's another thing you got to watch out for. So let's see. Bush Dog, pouring rain here last 3 to 4 days, much needed. But he's got a mini river coming through his scrap shack. Oh man, that's rough. But hey, maybe you could put a sluice gate on it and pan out some of the gold that's washing down through the scrap shack. Roger's saying that we could use some rain there in Illinois. We've had 1 inch since May. Corn crop's looking terrible. Oh man, that's tough. Yeah, that is rough, man. Hopefully that comes through. We've had I gotta say, we've had some really good corn here this year. Corn and the watermelons have been really good too so far. So I think we're getting the rain that we need to keep our agriculture community good and healthy here in Florida. Around the southeast here. So that's the good news of having the heat and the rain, right? So yeah. All right. So Bush Dog was saying, I thought about doing something like that. Yeah, man, pan out that gold. Oh, that's funny. Oh man. All right. So anyway, watch out for the heat, folks. The summer is still young, and it's just going to start getting warmer. So really watch out for that. And then, of course, you got to watch out for the sun. Look at this. I don't know if you can, I think you can all see this. So yeah, I am quite a redneck here. So when I'm out in the sun, I tend to wear a long sleeve shirt, and this is where the neck collar is. And then I get this. Now I also wear a brimmed hat, and I'll put sunblock on, but I still ended up getting enough sun that you can see the difference in the neckline. So I guess I'm a redneck. Oh man. All right. Our industrial metal is one that we all love to talk about. This has got to be one of our favorite metals. We're gonna chat about copper here for a little bit. So we're going over to Kitco for the copper charts. I like their historical charts. It gives us a chance to look at what's been going on with spot prices and inventory. So we can see the copper is up just a little bit here in the 24-hour. But what I really wanted to look at was this 30-day. So here we can see that copper has a nice rise over the 30-day period, and that's good. That's what we want to see. And if we look over the 60-day period, we can see that this is what we had talked about. We had been talking about why our copper price is dropping, and then we've started to see it come back up again. And really what is going on, at least based on all the research I've been able to come up with, is that China has been slowly cranking up. And we're starting to see the results of China starting to crank up some production. So as China starts cranking up more production, they're going to start consuming more copper. And we should see these copper prices probably start to climb, because they've already started climbing, but should continue to climb here. So we were dealing with some confused signals here. I mean, if we looked at the 60-month, we saw, we had this 6 month, that in the 6 month chart, we had this nice climb and we were all really happy. And then we had all these ups and downs going on here, but then we had this big decline we were all saying, hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? And the story here was China hadn't really opened up the way everybody was expecting, and there was a drag on it. And now they've opened up and we're starting to see the demand pick up. So the prices are starting to rise again. And that's good for us. Good for us scrappers. But here's what I want to really look at. And this is the warehouse levels. So 30-day COMEX copper warehouse, the inventories look like the copper inventories are starting to build up again. And then if you look at the 60-day, though, you've got a little bit different twist to that story, because in the 60 days, the inventories built up, but then they were kind of staying flat here. And then we know that in this about halfway through here is when we started to see the price start to rise. That's because China started opening up. China started consuming more copper, but the inventories did not rise. Look, the inventories were relatively flat, and they've only now just started to pick back up again. So that's not a big rise in the inventories, and that's most likely what's going on here is because China is starting to consume more copper, the inventories aren't going to keep up. And then if we look at the 30-day London Metal Exchange warehouse stocks, this is an even better story for us, because what we can see is this drop in the warehouse levels that, combined with the story, with the news and the discussions of China starting to increase their production and get moving again, warehouse levels dropping as that copper inventory is consumed, that's going to be driving prices back up again. So we can see here that this trajectory is good for us. That's the 60-day London Metal Exchange warehouse levels. And if you look at the 6 month, we look right here. Here's 6 months ago. Here we are. We're down a little bit. And so the more that inventory level drops, the better it's going to be for us as scrappers, because that means that they're going to be buying more scrap copper. If we look at the 1 year, that's an even better signal for us. So for the year, the overall situation is that copper is being consumed. This downward trend in the warehouse stock levels tells us that overall more copper has been used than put into storage. So this is going to lead to a continuing upward price, downward inventory. And this is a beautiful, beautiful signal here for us. In the 5-year trend, you can see that inventory levels are the lowest that they've been in 5 years. excuse me, not the lowest that they've been, but lower than they've been in the last 5 years. And if we just go back here to September 21 and we connect these high points, we see that they're still trending down. All these high points that kind of hit this line going down. And if we look at the bottoms here, we see that the bottoms are also going down. So even when the stocking levels are relatively high, they're still lower relative to the past, and the lows are lower than the past. So all of that is good for us as scrappers, because it means that we should see copper prices starting to come back up again. So what have you all seen? Have you all had any price increases in your scrap yards that you sell to? If you have sold any of your copper, what are you starting to see for pricing there? Let's see. Now, over here we had, who was it? Let's see. Somebody said something about that they were really hurting from some yard work. Oh, here we are. Mowing the grass, hurting like no other. I hope you had a great time with your family. Oh man, yeah. You know, I did the yard yesterday. I think that's where I got all this sun from. Got to do the yard, man. When you get this much rain and heat, the grass just goes like crazy. So scrapping on the fly says copper down to 145 a pound for number one and $1 for number two. Hopefully that's going to be turning around for you here pretty soon. You really ought to start to see that at least stabilize, but it should be coming back up for you here pretty soon. So, Jose, welcome. Great to see you here, man. Let's see. Is there a law where much yards have to pay fair price? No, there's no law that tells scrap yards what they have to pay. What drives that is competition. So if, you know, this is a really good discussion to have and a really good point because there's the scrap yards will, of course, they want to make as much money as they can. Everybody wants to make as much money as they can. And so they're going to buy as low as they can, but sell it for as much as they can. And if you only have one scrap yard in your town, then, you know, they can pay whatever they think, you know, whatever they can get away with. In fact, if they're smart, what they're doing is they're saying, all right, how much does it cost for gas to drive to the next closest yard? And then they'll say, all right, if it costs, you know, X number cents a pound or dollars a pound to drive that much further to another yard, you know, I'm going to offer this price for what, you know, anything, copper, aluminum, steel, because that way it will be better for people to just bring it to me rather than drive to the next yard and sell it. Now, some yards don't think that way. Some yards just say, what can I get away with? And they'll just, you know, lower what they're going to offer until they start to see people not bringing stuff in. And then they're like, all right, well, we're not seeing a lot of stuff coming in. We're going to have to, you know, start raising the price again so we get some material coming in. So the scrap yards have this really weird dynamic, right? If they lower the prices too much, people won't sell. People won't bring stuff in. But they can't raise the price so high that they have a lot of material coming in, but they're never going to make their money back on it. Now, if you are fortunate to live in a place like I do, where we have multiple scrap yards that are relatively close to each other, then there's a certain amount of competition that goes on. Now, each one of the yards tends to have a focus area. Some yards focus on non-ferrous. Some yards focus on steel or the ferrous materials. And so you've got a certain dynamic at play there. But, you know, generally speaking, prices are relatively consistent. And if you've been there for a while, you can start to figure out who's paying what. So, for instance, I have a yard that is, maybe a half a mile away from the shark cage. the price that they pay for shred steel is less than what I would get if I drove 30, 40 miles north to a larger yard. But when I do the math and I factor in the cost of the gasoline that it would take me to drive up there, it's a wash. Well, that means they're doing the same thing. They're figuring out the transportation cost to move the shred steel up further north to the next yard that pays better. And I mean, this is consistent. It's like I can almost, set a watch by it. It's so consistent, the price difference between those two yards. So when I have a bunch of shred and I need to get rid of it, I'll just take it over to the local yard. If I'm going to be coming up north for another pickup or something else that I have to do, then I'll bring a load with me to the yard that's going to pay me better because I'm going to go do something else while I'm up there. So it's worth bringing it up to do that. But no, there is no law that dictates that a scrapyard has to pay you a fair price. They'll pay you whatever they think they can get away with. Bottom line, period, end of story. And many of you know, because you've been around for a while, that there used to be a time when the scrapyards didn't even tell you what they were going to pay until after you got weighed in. And some scrapyards are still like this. We're in this day and age, we're really spoiled now with places like boardsort.com, where you can go on their website and this is what they're going to pay me. As long as I have batched the material properly, they're going to pay me this much money. But for a long time, scrapyards would not do that. And there's still some scrapyards out there that still don't do it. You come to the yard, you get weighed in, and then you find out what you're going to get paid. And sometimes that's a shocker and not a pleasant surprise. So, it's a hard one. And there's some benefit to the apps that help people share pricing information. And just the fact that we are all up on this network, whether it's on YouTube or Reddit or Discord or whatever service that you're up where you talk to other scrappers and we share prices around, it makes it harder for scrapyards to take advantage of us when we're selling material to them. So it's a very different kind of competitive landscape now. And as sometimes I know it seems like it's hard out there, but it used to be a lot harder. And those that have been in this business for a while, can probably remember the days when they had no idea what they were going to get paid until they showed up. So, want to be scrapper? Welcome. Great to see you here. Oh, let's see. My scrapyard just went to one price for aluminum instead of a different price for sheet, forged, and extruded. Yeah. I've seen some places do that. My yard, my non-ferrous yard, is still breaking it up by extruded, sheet, and E-Waste Mike's yard. They have a category for MLC, right? So low carbon. That's really interesting when yards kind of, do that. And interestingly enough too, with my yard, they don't separate pot metal or zinc from cast aluminum. It all just goes in one bin, which is really kind of weird when you think about it, because they're two very different things. But yeah, it all goes into one bin with them as one price. So yeah, it's always interesting when yards do that kind of stuff. Urban prospectors, it only makes sense that they do to keep customers coming back, but do not know of any law. Yeah. So, and JR Cat says, I've told them more than once to put it back on the truck. I hear you, man. Maybe sometimes that's just what you got to do, right? And if you do it enough, then maybe they'll start paying attention. I don't know, but yeah, don't be afraid to say, yeah, okay, I'm not going to take that price. Put it back on the truck. Now they may say, no, you put it back on the truck. In which case, okay, you put it back on the truck. But that is that. Don't ever be afraid to say, no, I'm not going to sell it to you for that price. I want just put it back on my truck. And that's one of the reasons why, especially for your non-ferrous kind of materials, your aluminums and your coppers and stuff, keep them in a bin, maybe a couple of bins that you can handle relatively easily. That way you're putting the bin on the scale, and if you don't like the price that they're offering you, or there's a surprise, it's pretty easy to put it back in your truck. A little bit harder when you have larger loads and they load it straight into one of their larger bins. That can get a little bit difficult then to take the material back again, but it's still possible because you have that right to take it back. And Roger is saying that his yards do one price too, but then they separate in different boxes. Yeah, that's just a call that they've made, right? They've decided that they're just going to offer one aluminum price. And here's part of what's going on there, right? They have to train their staff, if they have separate prices, how to recognize sheet, cast. And I know we're sitting here saying, wait a minute, this shouldn't be that hard. Yeah, sometimes things are a little bit, is that sheet or cast or extruded? And so they have to train their folks. And then on top of that, they have to train the customers. And so sometimes the customers are just throwing it all together anyway. So at some point, the people that own the yard, that run the yard, they make a decision, you know what, we're just going to go with one price. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a right thing. I think they ought to keep it separated. The categories are pretty reasonable. Extruded, sheet, cast. You don't have to get much more difficult than that. That pretty much covers all the aluminum that you're going to run into, unless you're, one of these folks that has access to specialty metals from a specific manufacturing company or something like that, in which case you're going to negotiate better prices anyway. So, yeah, that's a weird one. HH Recycling, welcome. Great to see you. Our yard puts pot, metal, and allied together as well. Yeah. Yeah, because they're not separating it, right? There's no way they're going to go back and try to separate it. So yeah, so that's the way they're selling it. So yeah, they're probably not getting as much as what they probably could. JR Cat, 250 pounds of extruded, called it dirty, and I put it in box, make it clean. 250 pounds of extrude, called it dirty, and put it in box, make clean. I'm not quite sure I'm following there, but it sounds like you had 250 pounds of extruded aluminum. They called it dirty aluminum, but then they put it in the clean box. And so, yeah, that kind of gets really confusing when that kind of stuff happens too, right? And scrapping the fly, as bad as I need the money right now, I'll hold till the price goes back up. Yep. Okay. Yep. And Jose, thank you, sir. That's the problem. They don't weigh the load in front of you. Wait a minute. Something that doesn't need a cat scale. When I asked for my Bear Bright back, they say too late. They dumped it. All right. So Jose, here's something that good scrap yards will let you watch the weigh-in. They will let you see the readout from the scale. They're not going to hide that from you. If they're hiding the scale numbers from you, if they won't let you watch the weigh-in in some way, then they're pulling a fast one and you need to look for another yard. If you don't have another yard option available to you, you might want to talk to the Better Business Bureau, which is a scam, and I don't like that group at all. Or some of your local government officials, to have them check on it, because you have a right to see the weight. And if they're not letting you see that, or they're hiding it from you, then, they could, depending upon the laws in your state and county, they could be in jeopardy, because there are laws when it comes to buying things by weight and proper representation to the customer. So for instance, my scales, I have to get them checked every year. So I pay a company to come in and certify that the scale is weighing accurately. And I have the numbers right there. When somebody brings something into me that we're going to weigh out, I let them watch me put it on the scale. They see the numbers. At boardsort.com, they have cameras all over the place so people can see the numbers. So yeah, if your yard is not letting you see that scale and see those numbers, then something bad could very well be going on there, and you may want to see if there isn't some action you can take to get that rectified with that yard. HH Recycling, I'm wannabe. This is the account on the computer. I hate typing on the phone. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, wannabe. HH wannabe. Raven the Blackbird, welcome. Great to have you here, man. Let's see. Let's see. Electronic scrapper in house. I'm glad my yard is very transparent. I've seen them help other scrappers separate items. You know, there's no reason for yards not to be doing that anymore, not to be transparent and not to be helping educate their customers. You know, the old bad days where yards could get away with stuff is quickly going away. And the yards that keep trying to take advantage of the customers, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to have some serious trouble. Put in a box mark. Okay, I got you. Yep. So Roger said a lot of yards will have a zero tolerance for material coming in, but ISRI standards allow for 2% contamination. Yeah. Excuse me. Ooh, I'm sorry. You know, there's always going to be a certain amount of contamination in materials. Some yards are better than others with it. You all have heard me talk about on my when I'm doing street scrapping loads, how I try to be careful with too much contamination in my shred steel. Yeah, it's a very interesting situation that, you know, yards, yeah, you know, they get sometimes a little too tight with the contamination because they know it's going to happen anyway. And then others are like, yeah, okay, whatever. So yeah. Jose says in Miami, there's a ton of yards. Yeah. So, man, shop around, Jose. Shop around. If you're having trouble with that yard, shop around to another yard, because there's no reason why they should be not letting you see the weights and be very transparent with y'all. Scrapping on the fly's got to get moving there. Have a great Father's Day, man. See y'all later on. All right. So, wow, we had a really good discussion of copper, and it was, I always love how these conversations can go in different directions when we are talking about it. So, and it, you know, one of the things that this sort of brings up is because we've been talking about the transparency at the yards. And another one of the issues that happens at yards is that depending upon the state that you live in, yards may have controlled items. And so this is the business note for those of you that are in the business of scrapping, or if you're still just selling scrap, you need to know what your state laws are when it comes to controlled items. That's how we refer to them here in Florida, controlled items. Should be easy enough to look up the state laws wherever you live. And then your county and your city may also have additional laws on top of that. But there are some items that are controlled items mainly to try to put a cap on theft. So we all know that catalytic converters are a big theft item. And you know, there's a lot of laws that are in place technically to try to stop the buying and selling of stolen catalytic converters. You know, here in Florida, you have to be able to prove that it's your catalytic converter, that it came from your vehicle, or that you're auto mechanic and this is a normal part of your business that would have you dealing with catalytic converters. Some criminal elements have tried to get around that by creating a legal company that they call a scrap company, and so that they can go buy and sell catalytic converters illegally that they have stolen. So they're working on figuring out how do you deal with that. Because I'm a secondary metal recycler and licensed scrap business here in the state of Florida, I could sell as many catalytic converters as I want. But if the police ever come and ask me, where did you get those from? I have to be able to prove that I bought them legally or I acquired them legally. So there's a way for some checking on the controlled items. Other controlled items, car batteries, lead acid batteries. Here in Florida, if you're a peddler, you can only sell 2 at a time. Businesses, of course, we can sell as many as we need to, but The idea is that they don't want people stealing batteries out of cars and boats and things like that, and trying to get rich off of lead acid batteries. Air conditioning systems, the external portions of central air conditioning units. If you're not in the AC business, or if you're not a scrap or recycler, it's a controlled item. You're not supposed to be selling those, period. The scrap yards aren't supposed to take those from you. Now, that's not for window units. Window units, no problem. Sealed unit from refrigerator, that kind of stuff. It's the big heat exchangers and central units coming from a central air conditioning system. They've literally had cases here in Florida where crooks have gone into the back rooms, cut into the backyards, cut all the pipes, and ripped off the condenser unit from homes that were for sale, or that they'd say, oh yeah, that house is for sale, it's vacant, so we'll just go steal that one. So there's a certain amount of that goes on that has caused those to be controlled items. It's also interesting, some of the other things that are considered controlled items around here. Manhole covers. Well, that makes a lot of sense. You don't want people going and stealing manhole covers, right? Railroad, anything that is related to the railroad or the power utility industry, or I think cell phone towers is also included in power utility now. So you need to, you can't just go sell railroad tracks. Now, if I show up with railroad tracks, I need to be able to demonstrate how I got them, if I get asked. And again, if law enforcement shows up, they can ask me, okay, where'd you get that stuff from? And if I can't prove where I got it from, then I'm going to be in hot water. So those kind of things, that makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want people going around stealing railroad track and cutting power cables off of transformer stations and things like that. Of course, there's still idiots that do it. And yes, they end up getting electrocuted and they die. And every now and then you see a story of, some chucklehead that thought he could just cut wire from a live transformer station. And, they found his body 20 feet away after he blew himself, on a load and was cooked. So, got to watch out for those, for the controlled items. So if you're in the business of scrapping and recycling, you need to know what those controlled items are so that you don't buy them from someone illegally, not knowing, not intending to, but, illegally. You need to understand what the requirements are. Now, a lot of times it's photo ID, signature, fingerprint, and in some cases, some documentation that shows where the material came from. Pretty important. So Raven the Blackbird says most mechanics have a way of trying to stop people from stealing catalytic converters by converters, place something that will prevent them from being stolen. Even the dealerships are doing it. Yeah, you put like cages and stuff on there. There's a number of folks, and I've even seen stuff advertised now online, cages that you can put up there. And sometimes you don't really have to make it completely foolproof. It just has to be so hard that the thief says, screw this, I'm going somewhere else. Shopping carts. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because I every now and then I end up with shopping carts from either businesses that were shut down, or one of the local businesses decided they didn't want to move the inventory, so they sold the stuff off. And so I end up with, shopping carts. But yeah, those are controlled items in a lot of places. Loch Ness Monster. By the way, welcome. I don't think I said hello, Loch Ness Monster. Old brass water meters. Yep. In fact, the other big one around here is backflow devices. So not necessarily the residential backflows, but the big industrial backflow devices. I'm pretty sure those are controlled items. So I've had to get paperwork from construction companies when I get those from them. Roger says he has some pot metal temporary grave markers that he had to get a certificate for. Yes, I can understand that. People going around stealing the brass and other stuff off of gravestones and grave markers, that would make a lot of sense. Absolutely. So anyway, bottom line is you really need to watch out for controlled items. Make sure you know what the laws are in your state so that you don't accidentally violate those laws. And don't be afraid to say, no, I'm not going to buy that from you. Like Loch Ness Loch Ness Monster is saying here, he had a bunch of grave markers that were at a funeral home and had been reluctant to take them in. Excuse me. So got an itch going in my throat here. All right, well, let's get a move along here because we have got some pretty interesting stocks to talk about today. As you all know, I get my stock data from the Value Line Investment Survey. They do not take any advertising revenue. So all of their information is data and unbiased analysis of the data. I then apply a standard of requiring that a company have 17 years of increasing cash flow per share, earnings per share, or dividends per share, in particular dividends per share, because I'm a dividend investor. I buy and hold stock for the long haul, trying to get my dividends out of them, and I tend to target something around 4% if I can. Yeah, they're not always going to be at 4% because, you know, that goes up and down depending upon the price of the stock. But that's what I try to do with my dividend investing. So the first company we're going to talk about is kind of a weird one. And I don't know how many of you are even going to recognize the name Leggett and Platt. They are primarily a furniture company, but I want to read this description for you. And I want to see if any of you can pick up on why this is so interesting, almost kind of funny with respect to Shark Scrapper. So, Leggett and Platt Incorporated, a manufacturer of engineered products, including bedding components, residential and official or institutional furniture, store fixtures, display, die castings, custom tooling, machinery, drawn wire, welded steel tubing, specialty wire products, auto seating, suspension, lumbar support, and control cable systems. Buried inside of there is something that I got to see if any of you pick up on the same thing because it cracked me up when I was reading that. So we'll see. I'll be looking at the comments as we go ahead here and take a look at this and see if any of you picked up on it. But the bottom line is Leggett and Platt, if we look at them from an investment perspective, we see that the dividend yield is really good, almost 6% right now. So that's that's real nice. And that's on a $30.99 share. So, the share price is very, very reasonable, pretty easy for folks to get in on this one if they want to. J.R. Cat, you nailed it. Ubiquitous wire shelving. Now I know who to thank for all that ubiquitous wire shelving I pick up. Absolutely. Oh, man. All right. So anyway, they are not qualified for cash flow per share or earnings per share, but they are qualified as a Div 0. So 17 years of increasing dividends per share with no flat or down years. If we look at this graphically, we can see here that the gold line are the dividends, and they've got a nice consistent upward trend. And even their cash flow and their earnings per share have tended up, although, they've had some challenges like a lot of people have, ups and downs, but generally moving in the right direction. So, and if we look at the year-to-year changes, we can see the gold bars, the dividends, per share have always been above the zero line. So that's what we're looking for. overall, this is a pretty interesting company. So if you're looking to diversify, you want to try something a little bit different. Hey, Raphael, great to see you here, man. This is a company you might want to think about putting into your portfolio, Leggett and Platt. Again, I want to emphasize that I'm not a financial counselor. I'm not certified, licensed, or in any way legally authorized to give you investment advice. I'm just sharing with you the things that I look at when I'm looking at companies that I'm going to invest in. Now, I do not have any shares of Leggett and Platt at this time, but I'm giving serious consideration to buying in because these things all, the dividend number, the price number, there are div zero, all of that screams to me that I ought to think about putting them in my portfolio. All right, so that's the furniture company. I couldn't help myself because, hey, Simon, great to see you here, man. I just couldn't help it when I was reading the description of the company because, yeah, the more ubiquitous wire I see on the curb now, the more I'm interested in buy. It's like closed loop investing, right? The ticker symbol LEG, LEG, right up here. Here's their ticker, LEG. So yeah, we'll definitely want to take a look at that. And of course, Urban, if you need any more, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to share with you what I can from this discussion on them as a stock. All right, so the other two are names that I'm sure most of you have heard of, have seen, might even have in your house right now. The first one is Clorox. Wait a minute. There we go. So the first one is Clorox. They make a lot of cleaning products. That doesn't surprise anybody. I'm sure you all know Clorox. Now, their dividend yield is not fantastic. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's never really been great. It's been consistently good, but it's never been great. So 2.9%, it's like, yeah, man, I don't know. Now it's 2.9% on $162. So, it's pretty reasonable money, but it's a pretty hefty buy-in. They are not qualified in either their cash flow per share or their earnings per share, but they are a div zero. So that means 17 years of increasing dividends per share. They've actually had much longer than that. So I've always toyed with the idea of buying some of this stock, but to me, it's just a little bit too rich for not as much return as I would like to get. But it's just a good, stable company, and it's one of those companies that is going to be there for the long haul. So a good buy and hold stock if you want to go that way. Now, the other one that is also related to cleaning, and I'm potentially opening myself up to a lot of jokes here. I'm sure E-Waste Mike is just not going to be able to resist. Kimberly-Clark. So Kimberly-Clark is, their dividend yield is kind of up more towards where I would like to see it at 3.5%. But, look at that. That's $136, $137 a share. So it's a little bit steep buy-in, but they're a div zero, right? So 17 years of increasing dividends per share, actually much longer than that. And they're doing really well. So they're not qualified by cash flow or earnings. Here, let's take a look at the graphs. So you can see that, pretty nice, good, steady, slow increase to keep up, kind of keeping up with inflation here. You can see that they've had every now and then they run into a little bit of trouble, but for the most part, they're a pretty good company. They're doing the right stuff. Now, Kimberly-Clark may not fully understand everything that they make. So they develop, manufacture, and market personal care products, right? So Huggies, pull-ups, little swimmers, good nights, Kotex, light days, Depends, and Poise. And they also have the consumer products, Kleenex, Scott, Cottonelle, and Viva. Then they also have a professional side, the KC Professional, and that's the kind of stuff that you would expect to see: apparel, wipers, soap, sanitizers, tissues, and towels for industrial grade uses. So, and then they also have some healthcare products and medical stuff and infectious disease prevention kind of stuff. So, there's, again, this is what the talking heads would tend to call a defensive stock. They're good, steady dividends. It's the kind of thing that people are still going to be buying in the ups and the downs. It's a pretty reasonable company to buy into for consistent, reasonable long-term gains. But you got to be willing to swallow this $136 pill per share, and you got to buy a few shares in order to make it make a reasonable difference for you. So I really was expecting a little bit more from folks when we started talking about what they make, right? Yeah, old person diapers. So you know what? I tend to stay away from the alcohol stocks and stuff like that. I've just never found them to really be financially what I'm interested in. But then again, maybe what you're talking about is drinking some stock. So that's another way to look at it, I suppose. And JR Cat just put a gallon of Clorox down the well. So yeah, I know you were replacing the well. Hopefully that's all done and you are good to go now with your well work. So yeah, so there's some pretty interesting companies there for y'all to consider. I don't own any of these that we've just talked about, but here I'm going to go back to Leggett because this one is really interesting for me now. I'm gonna take a closer look at this. I may be adding some of this to my portfolio because there's a lot to like about this, and having found the source of the ubiquitous wire shelving, I mean, what's not to like about that? Really? Come on. Oh man. So the defensive stocks, those are always a good one to consider if it meets the requirement for consistent year over year increases. Because when you are investing for dividends, you don't want to have to worry about is the dividend going to pay. And so sometimes I'm willing to accept a stock that isn't going to pay as much, may not meet that 4% threshold that I would like to see, but I know it's a good, strong stock and it's going to be around, and the industry that they're in, like, these defensive household products is one that, regardless of the ups and downs, people still need toilet paper, people still need tissue, and somebody like Kimberly-Clark, they got us from the very beginning, right? They're putting us in diapers when we're babies and diapers when we're old. So it's and then everything in between. So it's definitely a interesting stock to consider for your portfolio. Well, look, folks, I have had a wonderful time sharing all of this with you. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to drop a thumbs up, and make sure you're telling other folks about these Sunday chats, because you don't necessarily have to be a scrapper or recycler because we talk about the investment stuff. So there's something here for everybody, and I love sharing this kind of information with folks. So a great week. I look forward to seeing all of you over on Scrapping Irish's live stream. Remember, if you have autoplay enabled, then you will automatically be redirected to Scrapping Irish's live stream. You don't have to do anything. As soon as I end this broadcast, it'll take you right over there. If you do not have autoplay enabled, I don't know if you're going to get a link or what's going to happen, but hopefully you'll find your way over to Scrapping Irish's live stream, and we'll have some fun chit-chatting over there. For those of you that also have YouTube channels, I don't know if you noticed, but YouTube just made a change to monetization requirements. So they now have a new category that has a lower threshold of entry. So for those of you with your own YouTube channels, you may want to look into the new thresholds for YouTube's monetization categories. All right, everybody, we will see you over on Scrapping Irish's channel. Have a wonderful Father's Day and a great week.